Hey everybody, this is Virginia Milner back with another tutorial for you. And yes, for any of you who watched the last video, I am wearing the same clothes and you're looking at the same stuff in the background because I am moving and I'm trying to get a couple of these worked out before I go to my new place, because you never know when the internet isn't going to work right, it's not set up right, or what the situation might be. So the next time you see me, you will see a different background. And hopefully it won't be one of the libraries because my internet doesn't work or something like that. Wouldn't that be bad? Anyway, so we're going to do a bracelet. Eventually, I actually have a necklace that I started that I wanted to do. Why didn't I do the necklace? I don't know. It's all ready. Anyway, but I found this idea for a bracelet. It was done with leather on something else. And I thought, well, I'm going to change it to chain. And I thought it was very pretty and very summery, springy, lightweight, and you can doctor it up and change it around so that it's something that you can wear all year round. With the leather, it looked more like fall to me. But I thought this was very, very spring and summer, what we're going to do. So I'm doing what I'm calling a 3-strand bead and chain bracelet, which is going to be a strand of beads down the middle, or a chain of beads, chain link of beads, with a frame of chain on each side. And I think it's going to be very, very pretty. I haven't done it yet. So this is going to be us finding out together, but I'm pretty sure that this is going to be very nice. So what we need for this is our usual pliers, our cutters. This one, I've used them so much, the little spring is missing, but my others are all packed up. So this is good. The cutter still works. That's fine. So anyway, cutters, round nose pliers, and you'll know the difference between those and square because the barrel is round all the way around. And then the square ones are slightly rounded on the outside. They're square, chain, flat, depends on the brand that you buy as to what they're called. Slightly rounded on the outside and perfectly flat on the inside of the barrel, so that when you push them together, you get a flat look. Whereas with the round ones, you can see they're round. Pliers. Very nice. Okay, and then you're going to need, I'm using 4mm rounds. Well, you'll see them better when you get down to the other camera, and 20 gauge wire to wrap them. I'm also using this triple strand connector. Hard to see, they're pretty small. That little guy, using that. That's better. Okay, I'm using that little triple connector guy, and those of you who get kits will get one. Remember, the kits are free, the tutorials are free, always. And you need 20 gauge wire to wrap your beads, and you're going to need some chain. I'm using some very, very textured, really pretty chain to do this because I just saw this chain and I loved it, and I've been using it for a few of my little videos. Very pretty. And you will also need jump rings. I'm using small jump rings to attach your beaded links to your connector. That's it. That's all we need for this. So let's get going. Let's get started and see how this is going to come out, because I'm a little anxious to see the finished project. All right. So the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is wrap our beads. So what we want to do in order to determine how much wire you need is to measure your little bead, and it's easier if you put the bead on the wire so that it doesn't roll around when you're holding it up against your ruler or your tape measure, whichever you want to use. So this is approximately, if you want to do the math, this is a 4mm bead, and 1 inch is 25.4 inches. So you can kind of do the math to determine how much you need for 1 inch of beads out of 4 millimeter. But the easiest way is to just lay it up against the ruler, and you'll see that it's a little more than 1/8, not quite 3/8 of an inch, but a little bit more than 1/8, and a little less, not 3/8, a little more than 1/8 and a little less than 1/4. So that's how much that is. Then I need about 1 inch on each side in order to do my wraps. So I'm going to give myself 2 1/4 inches just to be safe. And those of you who get kits will have just a long piece of wire. You can keep it intact, or you can cut it into the pieces. Now, if you're using a different size bead, you need to add more to accommodate the bead size that you're using. All right, so I'm going to measure down about 1 inch away from the end. I don't need that on there right now. I'm going to measure about 1 inch down from the end, because that's what I'm going to need in order to make my loop and to wrap my bead. So I'm going to give myself 1 inch to 1 1/8 inches if you want a little bit extra. I'm going to bend my wire back, grab my round nose pliers, slide my wire down about 1/4 of the way down my pliers, because I don't want too big a loop. I want this to look nice and delicate and dainty, and I want those loops to be comparable to the loops in my chain. So I'm not going to make it too big. So I'm going down about 1/4 of the way down my pliers. Then I'm going to bring the tail of my wire over the top of my pliers and down the side, like so. And then without shifting my wire, I'm going to open my pliers up, rotate them back, and clamp back down, and then bring the tail of that wire under the pliers to make a loop. And so there's my loop. Then I'm going to give myself one little wrap and put or half of a wrap, put my bead back on, because I want to make a little cap on top of my bead. So I'm going to put my bead on, and then I'm going to make the loop on the other side. So I'm going to bend my wire, grab my pliers, slide down about 1/4 of the way, loop my wire over the top and down the side, open my pliers up, rotate back, clamp back down, and there's my loop. I'm going to leave that one open. This one I'm going to wrap. And I want a nice little cap on top of my bead. So I'm going to wrap that tail just over the top of my bead, like so. When it gets too short that I can't use my fingers anymore, I'm going to use my pliers and just gently guide that around on top of my bead. So I have a nice little cap here, just like that. Then I'm going to push that little end down with my pliers until it rests against the rest of the wire as close as I can get to my bead. And there's no sharp edges sticking up. It is as close as you can get. And if you can get it to slide under the wires, even better. So now there's my little cap. Nice. Now I'm going to go ahead and clip this off. I just need about another ½ an inch to 3/4 of an inch to do my wrap, but I don't want to wrap it yet because I need to connect it to something. So I'm going to go ahead and snip that off. And let's go ahead and do another one. So I'm going to bend it back about 1 inch to 1 1/8 from the end. Grab my pliers, slide my wire about 1/4 of the way down my pliers. And I always say all pliers aren't created equal, so you're going to need to get used to your pliers to determine how far down the barrel you want to go to get the size loop that you want. For me, it's about 1/4 of the way down. Then I'm going to bring my wire over the top of my pliers and down the side until it meets the longer strand of wire. Without shifting my wire, I'm going to open my pliers up, rotate back, and clamp back down so that now I have space to bring my wire under my pliers and make my loop. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and slide on my bead without doing any wrapping this time. I like to show different ways to do things. There's never just one way. Okay, and I'm going to bend my wire back on the other side. Make a loop, just like I did on the others. Over, wrap it as far as I can, then open my pliers, rotate back, and bring the wire the rest of the way under. There's my other loop. It's a little off center, so I'm just going to roll it forward like so. Now I'm going to cut off this long tail because I don't need it. And now I'm going to show you how to attach the beads. So I'm going to take one of my open tails and slide it into one of the closed tails. Might need to open this up just a little bit. And by that, I mean just lift the wires apart. Slide that closed ring into the open ring and let it drop down into the loop. Grab my pliers, hold on to the face of my loop, and then wrap that tail around between the pliers and the bead until I have a little cap on top, just like I did with the other one. And there's my little cap. I have a little bit more than I think I need on this one because I like the end to end right here in the middle of my bead. So I'm going to snip that off, that little tiny bit off that I don't need, which is maybe 1/16 of an inch, actually. I don't even think it's that long. Let me get some leverage. There we go. Snip that off. And then push down that little tip until it rests against the rest of the wires and hugs the bead. Here we go. And so now I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the rest of the chain that I've already made. So again, I'm going to lift this wire away from the ring, slide my closed ring down the wire and into the open ring, just like that. Hold the face of my wire with my pliers and wrap it just a couple of times until I have a nice little cap the way I want it to look on top of my bead. You can wrap it 2 times. I'm only wrapping it 2 because this is just 4 millimeter and I don't want to cover it up too much. But if you have a bigger bead, you can give it more wraps. And it just depends on your preference. If you want to see more wire, then wrap it more times. If you want to see less wire, I wouldn't give it less than 1.5 wraps, just for the sake of making sure it's nice and secure. Okay, I think I can cut off a teeny tiny bit. I don't think it's even a measurable amount. And push that little tail down against the other wires, nice and snugly against the bead. No sharp edges there. And there is my little chain. Nice. So now you want to measure. You want to make sure you're not too big or too small. And I know that I'm going to be adding on my connector on each side. And I'm going to be connecting it with jump rings, and that's going to add a little more length. So I'm going to go ahead and measure where I am because I've also got to do a clasp. So that's going to add on some length. So right now I'm at about 6 7/8 inches. My wrist is about 7.5, and I need some space for my clasp to work. My clasps are going to be about 1/2 inch each. So that means this is going to be about 7 7/8, which is perfect. Thank you very much. Thumbs up. So just measure your wrist as you make your lengths. I mean, when you have a lot of beads in your kit, and I find this in my classes, people just keep making links, making, and they forget to measure their arm. And then you have a really long chain and it's too big for you. So don't forget to measure as you go. When you get about 3, measure at about 5 inches, depends on your wrist, and then start looking at how those links are laying against your wrist and if it looks like you've got enough for your chain. And then add in what the distance is going to be, what more of the length is going to be added with your connectors, with your jump rings, and with your hook and your loop. And that will tell you how much you need. Now, let's go to the fun part. Let's add our chain. So this is my thought. This is what it's going to look like when we finish. Get this around here. I thought we would have a strand of chain on one side and a strand of chain on the other side. And this will be our bracelet. You see that? Isn't that neat? Yay! Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now that I messed up my camera, that's what we're going to do. Oh, it's so dainty looking. All right, so anyway, so this is what we have for, this is what I have for my beads. So I know I need to match the chain up with the length of my beads. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a little piece of wire, and I'm going to string on my beads, and then I'm going to string on my chain, and I'm going to cut the chain the same length as my beads. Easy as that. And I cut it a little longer, and then if I need to, I can cut down a couple of lengths off. But this way, because you're wrapping, there's no way to know exactly how much you need. Now you can go ahead and cut your chain and then make your beads to match your chain. But because this is wire wrapping, there's no way to know exactly how much you're going to end up with on your beaded chain. So you're better off doing the chain first, beaded chain, and then adding the standard chain later. So I'm going to snip that off there. Let's see if I have. That's about right. That looks good. And then I'm going to do the other side. So there's just no exact measurement on this. It's number one going to depend on your wrist size. It's going to depend on the length of the beads that you, the length of your bead, your center bead length. Okay. Get it there. That's on the wrong thing. I hope I didn't cut it wrong. Get on there, my goodness. There. Yes. I'm off again. This is annoying. All right. So make sure these as close to the same length as possible. Good. Very good. Okay, so now let's attach everything. So I'm going to take my jump rings. And here's the proper way to open your jump rings. You either want to use a plier and your thumb, put the plier on one side of the opening, which is right here. There's my opening. And then just take your thumb and push down to open up your jump ring. You never want to pull it apart. You just want to twist it. Or you can put one plier on one side of the opening, there's the opening, and one on the other side, and just twist. Same result. Either one works. Let's open those up. I gave myself an extra one in case one decided to jump ship. Okay. All right, so now let's attach. Now, because I'm not attaching these to anything else, I can go ahead and close up these loops. Let's do that. Because my jump rings are open, so I don't need this open, right? Right. Okay, I got my little cap. My little loop is leaning a little to the side, so let's straighten that up a little bit. And let's trim off the excess wire. These beads are slippery. These are howlite. Howlite is supposed to promote serenity or something like that. And somebody who in one of my classes who had red howlite, she said, but red is the exact opposite of serenity. How does that work? I said, your guess is as good as mine. All I know is what I read. I said, maybe they counteract each other, or not counteract, but they kind of level each other out so that you're not too serene or too whatever the opposite of that would be. Okay. Snip that off. Snug that down. Nice and snuggly buggly. And let's go ahead and attach our pieces. So the first thing I'm going to attach, I'm going to go ahead and attach the center first. So I'm going to slide my jump ring into the loop and then slide that jump ring also into the center loop of my connector. Come on. Might be easier to do it the opposite way, do the connector first and then the chain. It's up to you. Either works as long as you get them on there. Then close it up. Twist it closed. Make sure those ends are nice and tight together. And you can squeeze this closed, but you're going to need to make some adjustments. Squeezing it is not going to get those ends to match up perfectly every time. So you'll want to just kind of wiggle it a little bit until you get those ends to meet the way you want. And now let's add our chain. I'm going to do the opposite this time. I'm going to go ahead and put the connector on first and then put my chain on. And close it up. Do the little wiggle. Make sure it's nice and tight. And let's put on the other piece of chain. Grab another jump ring. Let's go chain first this time. Chain on. Let's see which way I like it better. Chain first, beads first, or connector first. What looks best for me? I think they both work. Equally well. And squeeze that closed and make my adjustments. Yes. So there's one side. Before I go any further, I'm going to hang it up and see if it looks like everything's still nice and even. Yes, they do. So let's go to the other side and do the other connectors. Okay, I'm going to grab my beads, connector on. I want to go from the center. I'm going to go from the center like I did before. So I'll do the middle and then put my bead on. Close it up. Nice and tight. Grab another jump ring. Chain. Oh. That didn't work, did it? And the connector. Close it up. There. Nice. And let's do the last one. I just love radio silence while I'm concentrating. I find it's easier to just lay this down and pick it up that way. I hope you can see what I'm doing. I have a feeling my fingers are in the way. Not. There. Close it up. Make my adjustments. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Everything's nice and straight. Yes, very pretty. And now we just need to make connectors. Now, where am I? In my time, I think I'm good. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and finish this up. Let's make our own connectors. Now, I know some people don't like to do that. So if you don't, you can just put a jump ring on one side and a lobster clasp and a jump ring on the other side and attach a lobster clasp and then attach that clasp to the jump ring. But I just really do like making my own clasps. So that is what we're going to do. So I've got my little piece of wire and I'm going to show you how to make a hook and a loop. Now, I also have this little piece of twisted wire that I had left over from my last video, and I think I'm going to use that. Do you need twisted wire? No, I just don't like waste, so I'm going to use this little piece of twisted wire. Do not look for twisted wire in your kits, ladies and gents, because I'm just giving you the 20 gauge and I'm just using this extra. Do not cry foul, please. I really want to use this up before I have to throw it away before I move. Okay, so all I need is for my little loop, which is, since it's going to be simple. Sometimes I put beads on them as well, but I want this to be the focus. So I'm just going to make a simple loop. So I'm cutting about a little less than 2.5 inches is all I need to make my loop. So I'm going to start with a small loop on one end, and that's going to attach to my chain or to my connector. So I'm going to start with that, and that's going to just be a simple loop. Well, let's make the big one first. So I'm going to go all the way down to the back of my pliers to make a large loop, as large a loop as I need for my hook to go into. So I'm going to go back to the back of my pliers. I'm going to give myself about 1/2 inch of wire on one side, 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, because that's all you need. And then I'm going to take the other side, the long side, and I'm going to wrap it around the pliers, like so, to create a loop. So that's 3/4 of my loop. I'm going to open my pliers up, rotate them back or down, and then I'm going to bring that long tail around the rest of the way. So there's my large loop. That's going to accommodate my hook. So now I'm going to take my flat pliers. I'm going to hold on to the face of my loop, and the long side that I just wrapped, I'm going to straighten it out like that. So that's what I have now. Then I'm going to take the short tail and wrap that around the straight piece of wire. I'm just going to wrap that around 2.5 times. Just push those little wires together so that they're nice and neat. Cut off that end. I like the end to rest right in the center of my loop. That off. Push that little end down so that it rests against the rest of the wire. And now we just need to make a loop to connect to one end of my chain. And now this is flat, so the connector needs to be going the opposite direction. So see how this loop is flat? My connector needs to go up and down. So I'm going to bend my wire back like so. So this is what you have. And I'm just going to make a simple loop. You can make a simple loop to connect it, or you can make a wrapped loop. And I do have enough to make a wrapped loop, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to do a simple loop. So I'm going to cut this down to about 1/2 inch. Make my loop. Again, we're going to take my wire about 1/3 of the way down my pliers. Nothing sticking out the back here. And I'm going to make a simple loop like we've been doing all along. Make sure that the tip touches the wire. There we go. Now let's make our hook. Let's take the rest of my wire what I want to do is go down. Let's measure this again. Where am I in size? So there's my hook. It's going to be attached. And I have just under 7.5 inches, which is perfect. So now I have plenty of space for my hook to add my hook. That's going to give me another 1/2 inch or so, which is all I want. Okay, so I'm going to measure about 1 inch from the end of my wire. 1 inch to 1.25 inches. Then I'm going to bend my wire right there at that 1 to 1.25 inches mark. And I'm going to squeeze those little edges together so that both the short tail of wire and the long tail meet up. And you can use your pliers for this also. Once I had a young teenager in my class. She was so strong she could squeeze the whole thing together with her fingers without use of pliers. I was very envious. Let me squeeze that. There. Nice. So now I'm going to go down here to the bottom and I'm going to hold on to it with my pliers. I always like to make sure that I check. I'm going to bring this down a little closer and make sure that my wires are side by side, not crossing over each other. Then I'm going to go down here to the bottom and I'm going to give myself about 1/2 inch of wire. And because we gave ourselves 1 inch to 1.25 inches, that means that if I take 1/2 inch from the bottom here, I'm going to have 3/4 of an inch left up here, or half, depending on how much I measured out. Okay, so I'm going to bend my wire up like so. Then I'm going to slide down to the center of my pliers because that's where the grip is strongest. Then I'm going to wrap my wire and see how it's trying to pull away. Don't let it. Really get a good grip. Wrap my wire around the long stem. I'm just going to go about 2.5 times around. Again, once I can't go any further with my fingers, I use my pliers. I want to go in the middle of these 2 wires is where I want it to end. Got a good curve going there. Get a little bit more of a curve because I find it's easier to push it down if it's already curving in the direction you want it to go. Then I'm going to clip this off so that this little end will push down right there in between those 2 little wires. I'm going to cut that off. Get rid of that excess. And use my flat or square or chain nose pliers, whichever they're called, depending on your brand, and push that little tip down against the other wires as close as I can get to this little tail so that there's nothing sticking up that's going to poke at me later. Nice. Now, all I need for the rest of this to attach here is about 1/2 inch of wire in order to make a loop to attach to my connector. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off, measure that, you can bend it back. Let's see. So my wires, it's going to go that way. Boop, 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 boop. Yes. Exactly. So what I need to do is bend my wire back like so. So here are my two pieces of wire side by side, and I bend the wire up and down. Make sure they don't get twisted. Want them nicely side by side. I'm going to cut that off at about 1/2 inch. And make my loop. Just like we've been doing all along. Slide down about 1/4 to 1/3 of the way down my pliers. The loop doesn't have to be massive. Make sure nothing's sticking out the back. And make my loop as far as I can until I can't go any further. Open up, rotate back, clamp back down, and continue until I have a loop. There we go. Now I have something to attach that to. Make sure there are no gaps in there. Close that up nicely. There we go. And now let's make our hook. Again, I want to make sure they're nicely side by side. Then I'm going to grab my round pliers. I'm going to slide down a little bit, about 1/4 inch from the tip here. And then I'm going to bring, you can do this one of two ways. You can wrap with your pliers, or you can bring the wrap from the bottom. It's going to have the same effect one way or the other. So I'm going to wrap that around. Until I have a hook. Neat, huh? Now I want this to have a little graceful curve in the back here. So I'm going to bend it back. Just a little bit. There we go. And now, straighten that out a little. There we go. I'm going to go in with the tip of my pliers, the round ones or the square ones, either one is fine. And I'm going to put a little ledge right here on the bottom. So I'm just gripping my two ends of my wire that are wrapped down here at the bottom. I'm going to turn my pliers up and give it just that little kink. And there's my loop. I mean my hook. And it's going to attach to my nice little loop. And I like to make sure that mine are nice and tight against the loop down here, so that when I put it on my loop, it won't just fall back out. It'll stay in place. So now let's attach everything. I'm going to go ahead and attach my little clasp, my little hook. So I'm going to open it up, twist it open, slide it into the loop of my connector. Oops, you didn't see that. I opened it up, slide it into the little loop of my connector, and close it back up. Nice and tight. Then I'm going to go to the other side and I'm going to add my hook. So again, I'm going to open it up. Slide it into my loop. And close it. Oh, really? Really? You want to play it like that? There we go. Close it up. Make sure everything's nice and tight. Nice and tightly closed. That little tip should be meeting the back of my wire. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is our bracelet. Oh, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, so let's try it on. As I mean, oh, okay, let's get that fastened. Nice. It's, see that, no, it's fine. I was gonna say it's a little bigger than I like, but it really is fine because it should have a little bit of give so that it can play around on your arm a little bit. Not much, a little bit. So there we go. Here's my little clasp, our little handmade clasp. And there's my bracelet. Very nice. Ah, what do you think? I like it. I'm trying to see how big it actually is. No, it rests in a good spot. It's good. It's not too big. If it was way down there, I might have a little difficulty. But this, very nice. So there's my bracelet, all ready to wear, maybe even today. What do you think? Nice. And I am pretty sure that this video came in at under an hour. I'm pretty, well, part of it is because I had most of the chain already done, but we didn't need all of the redundancy of having to do it over and over and over. All you needed to do is see how it was done, how you link everything together, how you cut your links to be the same size, how you attach it to your connector, and how you make your loop and clasp out of 20 gauge wire. Mission accomplished. Yeah. So that is today's program. I love it. I am absolutely in love with it. And I hope you enjoy your bracelet when you make one. I might make another one in another color. My little clock is telling me, yes, you're coming up on your hour. Get moving. I like it. I like it a lot. So I hope you will make one, and I hope you'll show it to me. Please make sure that you can always get in touch with me, and know that you can always get in touch with me at jewelrygen20@gmail.com. That's JEWELRYGIN20@gmail.com. And you can also get in touch with me in the library at facebook.com/DeKalb Library. That's facebook.com/DEKALBLIBRARY. Show us what you make. Tell us what you think. Give us your comments because we really love to hear them. But until next time, until you see me next time. I hope you'll have a great week and a good weekend. So long.